Hello, Devlin Bishop here with you, and welcome to another episode of Devlin's Mondo Nostalgia Radio Show. Yeah, that's quite the mouthful. And yes, you are not hearing things. I have decided to rebrand my podcast. That doesn't change the great 138 episodes I've already brought you, and it's not going to change the format too much. Now, there is a bit of a change, but nothing to worry about. I've just decided that, I don't know, my pirate days are behind me, and my Mondo Nostalgia days are my future. So I just decided that I want to try to rebrand it, because people would come up to me and say, Devlin, I'm interested in your podcast. What's it about? And I would say, well, my pirate radio show, it's whatever I feel like talking about. My feelings, things I want to vent about, pop culture, movies I review. And I realized that when I'm telling them this, they're intrigued. But because there's no real focus on my podcast, they seem like they lose interest in the middle of my conversation. And so I decided what I'm going to do is, from now on, my podcast is going to focus more on pop culture. So like movies, music, nostalgia, television. And I'm from now on going to concentrate on this. Now, for you regular listeners, all 17 of you, I don't want you to feel that this is the end of the show that you know. I am a passionate person, and I'm still going to be emotional. I'm still going to vent when I have to. I'm still going to share my opinions. I'm still going to, have co-hosts on. Absolutely. But I'm going to do a more focused show that's going to be more about actual pop culture stuff and nostalgia than just, me like, I'm in a bad mood, I'm going to talk about it. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to if something really hits me. I'm the kind of person that if I see something in the world that bothers me or something, I have to get it out. So I might, slip that in and stuff. But mostly I'm going to deal with pop culture and nostalgia. And so, but you're still going to get the same passion and heartfelt podcast that I've been bringing you for so long, over 3 years now. And I decided that, I'm just going to rebrand it and maybe get, more listeners. As much as I appreciate the 17 that take their time, I'd like to branch out and maybe get a couple of more that might be interested in hearing from me. So we'll see how it goes. Who knows? Maybe my pirate days will return one day. But, I always liked the name Pirate Radio Station. It was basically made because when I was a kid, I was fascinated with pirate radio stations. I think it came mostly from the movie Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater. And I kind of liked the name Pirate in there. And, as I grew up, we all grow up, and I realized, I don't know if the title really fits my show anymore. But anybody who knows me knows my passion for pop culture and nostalgia, so I decided to brand it that way. So it's a little bit of a mouthful, but I like it. It also goes along with some of the other things I'm working on that I'm very passionate about right now, like my Facebook Mondo Nostalgia page, which has new content pretty much every day. There are a couple days I miss if I'm having a low energy day or something, but I'm very proud of it. And I also, of course, working on the Damien and Devlin show, which we review movies, mostly nostalgic movies, but we have hit fairly newer ones lately too. And so, I'm going to kind of concentrate on a more thing. So I don't know, it's a master plan. I'm always a work in progress. Till the day I die, I will be a work in progress. Now, before I get to my first topic today, I do want to say that I'm coming over a head cold, and I still get stuffed up a bit. So that's why I got that lush, deep voice today that sometimes will show up, and that's my jazz singer voice. I call it my smoky jazz singer voice. So let's talk some pop culture and nostalgia. And I thought this was a perfect week to rebrand it due to the fact that, for those of you who know, I'm a Star Wars fan. If you go back to several episodes, I have talked about Star Wars in the past, the nostalgia of it, the fact that Star Wars was the first movie that really got me into movies, and, just even stuff like that special episode I did where I wasn't a big fan of The Last Jedi. So I talk about Star Wars once in a while, so if you're a Star Wars fan, hopefully you'll like it. But this week we got a new Star Wars movie, and after The Last Jedi, I have to say that I wasn't really looking forward to this. When they first announced they were doing a Han Solo movie, I decided I don't know if I need a Han Solo movie. First of all, filling Harrison Ford's boots is going to be almost impossible, but at the same time, I just don't know if I'd like to see some new stories in Star Wars. But then again, Rian Johnson gave us new stories in Star Wars that aren't so new when you actually do the math, but I wasn't a fan of that. In fact, it almost kind of put me off the whole series. As the trailers started showing up for Solo, a Star Wars story, I started getting a little more hyped for it. All I wanted from this movie was a little bit of fun and kind of reminder how much I still like the franchise. I don't want to sound like one of those crybabies or trolls on the internet, but The Last Jedi did really scar me. It took one of my heroes and, just kind of destroyed him for me in a lot of ways. Not only Luke Skywalker, but the Jedi Order itself was kind of trashed in that movie. And so, I was low energy. So when I saw this Solo trailer, I thought it was pretty good. As we got closer to the movie, the marketing actually was getting pretty damn good for this movie. And I loved some of the toys that I saw, some of the artwork for the posters I saw, and I was starting to say, I hope this isn't false hope, because I was excited for The Last Jedi too. I even bought a toy. I told myself I wouldn't, because when The Last Jedi came out, I bought one toy. Now, anybody who knows me knows I buy lots of toys, even before I saw the movie. The prequels, I bought tons of the toys, even before the movies came out. Yes, I had a Jar Jar Binks character before I knew who Jar Jar Binks was. But that's a whole nother episode. So I actually bought this doll of Han Solo because I thought the actor's pretty cute, and I thought it was actually a really good representation of him. And I thought, well, even if I don't like the movie, it's a cool Han Solo figurine. So anyhow, my friends and I went to the movies, and we got to see Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, first of all, I don't like the name A Star Wars Story. I hate when they put it in there. I know they did it for Rogue One. I don't like it. It reminds me of those little golden books. I don't know. They almost sound like these are juvenile movies. And like Rogue One was funny because of the fact that Rogue One was not a juvenile movie whatsoever. And Solo, some people are going to see, is maybe a little juvenile, but it's the Star Wars movie I needed to see right now. And I am happy to report that I am pleasantly surprised by Solo. I'm going to just call it Solo now. We know it's a Star Wars story, but it's just Solo right now. I had a fun time with this movie, and I felt like I was 9 years old again, sitting next to my dad, having the time of my life. I teared up many times during the movie, and I cheered and I laughed and I enjoyed everything about this movie. Alden Ehrenreich not only is good looking, but he is Han Solo. It takes a bit to get into it. He's very charismatic right from the start, but as soon as you see him growing, growing as the scoundrel he is, he starts, you see him as Han Solo, like Han Solo, sorry. And that is awesome. His interactions with all the other characters are phenomenal. Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian, played by Donald Glover, and Emily Clark, who played Kira, a girl in his life, and Woody Harrelson, who is kind of like a person he works with. I want to say a mentor. In some ways he is, but he's more, not really a mentor, but yeah, a little bit of a mentor. Like a boss that you listen to, but you're not sure exactly what to believe. But Woody Harrelson, you know, the interactions with all of them are good. So if anybody has any problems with this, if you're blaming Alden Ehrenreich, then you got some issues, because the guy works his ass off. And the best part of his version of Han Solo is that he does not try to do an impression. And that is the best thing to do. It's kind of like Chris Pine when he took over William Shatner's part of Captain Kirk in Star Trek. He didn't try to do an impression. He found little mannerisms that were definitely, William Shatner-esque, but he basically made it his own. And then when you saw the little Shatnerisms come in, it's fine. And there were moments that I actually saw him channeling Harrison Ford, and it's little subtle things like stance, or there was a scene where he's leaning up against a door, and I pictured Harrison Ford as a young guy, leaning against the door in the Millennium Falcon. Now, I'm not even sure if I ever saw him do that, but it just seemed like a Han Solo thing to do. And so, oh no. Now, I'm going to get this name wrong, but I want to give a shout out to Jonas Soyotamo. He plays Chewbacca in this new movie, and I want to give him some credit because he kind of takes over some big paws with Peter Matthew, and he does a great job. Chewie is wonderful in this movie. We get to see him more animated in this movie. We get to see him more emotional. We get to see him more vicious than we've ever seen him before, and it's great. As I said, there was a time when they announced this movie, I didn't want to see any of that. But while I was watching it, this was the movie I needed to see. The story is pretty simple, and it's actually kind of refreshing to see a movie, and I'm not going to do any spoilers in this because, I want you to go out and see it, and we're going to get to some of the backlash this movie's getting in a minute, but I want you to go see this movie. But the movie is pretty simplistic, but it's refreshing to see a Star Wars movie that doesn't deal with Jedis and the dark side and the good side and all that stuff. Now, I'm not saying it's not totally free of that, but it's not the focus of the movie. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. A little bit of a spoiler, but not really. Paul Bettany's pretty creepy as the villain. He's not the greatest villain, but he's interesting. Lando Calrissian does an amazing job as... Donald Glover does an amazing job as Lando Calrissian. Everybody says he steals the show, but I don't think he does. I think he's very good in the part he does, but Alden Ehrenreich, I have to give him, he's pretty much on screen most of the time, and he carries the film in a lot of ways. Emily Clark, I think the romance in this movie is actually well done. I feel the history the two have had and the complications that they have dealing with this. Thandie Newton also does a really great job in this, and there's a CGI couple of characters too. L3, who's Robot, who I thought was really, really awesome. And I believe Jon Favreau voices, the character escapes me, but he's a real cool four-armed kind of monkey kind of character that's actually quite interesting too. And it takes us back to the worlds. Like, Last Jedi had a casino scene that didn't really work, but we go to a couple of bars in Solo, and like some are just amazing that remind us like almost like the old cantina days. Now, there was a lot of trouble in the shooting on this, and I give Ron Howard so much credit. Lord and Miller, who directed the Lego movie and did the 21 Jump Street films, as well as other movies, they were originally the directors of this, but apparently they were sidetracked because the stuff they were doing was a lot of improv, which is their style. So Kathleen Kennedy should have known when she hired them that this is their style. But Ron Howard had quite a job to do by coming in and pretty much filming almost about, they claim, about 80% of the film to get back to the original script. And I love it. This movie has some hilarious moments in it, but it doesn't become cartoonish like a Thor Ragnarok, where they just overdo it. In fact, it's nice. There's scenes that are very tension-filled, and some of the characters I know are not even in danger because, well, we know that they go on to the original trilogy. But I still had that sense of whimsy, that sense of that sense of like worried that they were going to not get through and stuff. So I was on the edge of my seat and I was like a kid again. As I said, it was nice to see a movie that doesn't have to be complex and stuff. And it was just nice. And Ron Howard deserves a lot of credit for that, even though I think he's going to get a lot of flack for this movie. But you know what? He really did an amazing job with this film. The music was actually pretty cool, too. It's weird when you hear new scores for this because there's hints of John Williams all the way through it. But it's still a pretty good score on its own. But there is one scene, not really a spoiler, but there is a scene that actually made me cry, like tears of joy, where Han is, flying the Millennium Falcon for the first time, and basically, okay, this might be a little spoiler, but there's the scene where Chewie slips into the co-pilot's chair for the first time, and basically they play a hint of the Star Wars theme, and I was just in tears, and I was just loving this movie. I can't speak enough about Solo, and I know there's a lot of people who were turned off by The Last Jedi or turned off by what Disney's been doing with the Star Wars franchise. But I really hope that you don't just, I'm all for if you're protesting and you don't want to give Disney your money, but I hope you see this and decide if you like this movie on your own. Now, this movie is getting split reviews. Some people like it. Some people say it's entertaining, but it's fluffy. Some people says it doesn't have the same magic. I disagree with all of that. But you need to go out and see it for yourself. Now, this box office is already, first weekend is being talked about how low it is for a Star Wars movie. It was predicted to be pretty high, but I think even the predictions were way too high. And I know that within a couple of days, there's going to be screaming that Solo is a major flop. And this saddens me in so many ways. And I kind of hope it's not true, because I really hope people go out to see Solo, because it is a fun popcorn movie. But for those of you who think this movie doesn't have any heart, this movie has more heart than anything that was in The Last Jedi. And if people give up on Star Wars because of Solo, my days with Star Wars might be over. If people wind up loving the style that The Last Jedi was, where they basically just did whatever they wanted and didn't give a shit about the fans, I can't, Solo would be a good one to end it on. I'm not looking forward to any, they've talked about Kenobi movies, they've talked about Boba Fett, but you know what, after Solo, which I didn't want, I'm willing to give them a chance. But the truth of the matter is I like that this goes back to almost The New Hope. I watched A New Hope with Damien for one of our reviews recently, and this gave me that feel of going back to the original trilogy and just finding the fun and whimsy, but also the heart in this. It was good to see heroes being heroes and villains being villains, and then a lot of the characters even having gray areas because you're not sure, are they good, are they bad? I don't know which way to go. I didn't find this story predictable in any way, but honestly, it's sad that there's so much fatigue in the Star Wars thing already and that people are using Solo to be the one to walk away from, because I think they're missing a legitly good film. And I think a lot of people are also going in it with so much hatred, like nobody can replace Harrison Ford as Han Solo. Well, you know what? As our favorite heroes, villains, whatever, get older, we need to replace them. And Alden Ehrenreich does an amazing job with this. I love how people rage about Han Solo being a cast, and nobody complains about the fact that 3 actors played Indiana Jones already. You know, I've heard discussions of people saying, oh, it's going to be horrible when somebody takes on the fedora of Indiana Jones because I'm not ready for a new one. Well, you know what? River Phoenix, Sean Michael Flannery, I think his name, Sean Patrick Flannery, and a kid I don't remember, all played Indiana Jones before. River Phoenix did it in The Last Crusade in a flashback sequence on a train, with a circus train. Sean Patrick Flannery played young Indiana Jones in the movie, the television show. And also in the television show, there was a younger version of Indiana Jones. And I forget the actor's name, but yeah, he did a wonderful job with it too. And if people say, yeah, but they played him at younger ages. Well, what do you think Alden Ehrenreich's doing? This movie takes place like about 10 years before A New Hope. And I actually hope there will be a sequel, but I have a feeling that there's going to be such a backlash because of Solo, and the fact that it didn't make a lot of money is going to hurt it. So I'm crossing my fingers because, I don't know, it's hard for me to walk away from this franchise, but if I start getting movies like Last Jedi over movies like Solo, I'm going to just have to go nostalgic and remember the Star Wars that I used to love. Anyhow, I want to give Solo like a 5 rating, but I know there are some issues with it and stuff like that. Not many I can think of right now. All I'm thinking about is when can I go see it again. I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 5. I really loved it. I think it's an amazing movie. I think it was a solid storytelling more than even Infinity War, which I absolutely loved. But I think for a straightforward story and pacing, this movie had it better than Infinity War in a lot of ways. Anyhow, that is my review of Solo, a Star Wars story. Yes, I said I wasn't going to say it, but you know what? It's the official name. So I hope you go out and check it out. Anyhow, we are going to continue right now. I'm going to talk a little nostalgia for you because the summer's here and the time is right for dancing in the streets. No, I got sidetracked by an old Motown song. Glad I didn't sing it. I'm not saying that I'm a horrible singer. I'm saying that right now my voice would sound like either a sexy jazz singer or a sexy frog. Sorry, having a little bit of a drink. Stay hydrated. Stay hydrated. Anyhow, I was thinking about it. Flea markets. They're kind of making a comeback. Flea markets, antique markets, stuff like that. And I've been going to an Ottawa Street antique market. It's called an antique mall. It used to be the old Christmas wallpaper store that used to be on Ottawa Street. That was this big building, and somebody has bought it up now and has rented out booths. And if you haven't been to the Ottawa Street antique mall, you really should go because it is fabulous. People rent out booths and they're not even there. They just rent out the booths and they have numbers on all their things. But you can find so much great nostalgia there. Like, every time I've gone, I've picked up stuff, and it doesn't have to be even big stuff. I've picked up everything from like movies to stuffed animals to this great little jukebox I found. It's just a small little structure that I absolutely adore. And, I bought the Pirate movie album there. Good Lord, where could you find that? I don't think I ever saw that vinyl since it was back in theaters in 1983 or 2 or 3, whenever it came out. So, yeah, it's just an amazing place. And there's 3 floors of it. You can spend hours in there. And just, if you like jewelry, even vintage clothing, there's furniture, there's like just everything, because every booth is different. Memorabilia of all types, like toys, everything. Definitely check it out. Now, it made me think of nostalgia from the past. Now, I came to Hamilton in 1975, and this has pretty much been my home, Hamilton, Stony Creek. And my first flea market I used to go to was, I am going back a bit, so you youngins might not remember this, but there was a time in Hamilton's history, not even Hamilton, all of Canada, where you did not shop on Sundays. Stores were closed. The only stores that were open were like gas stations, convenience stores, but like big stores were closed. And my first flea market I ever went to was the old Eastgate Mall flea market. Because what would happen is the mall would be closed, but vendors would come in and set up tables and sell their wares in the mall. So you'd walk around the mall halls, and you would like buy stuff, and it was amazing. And I used to love it. And then a couple of years it went thing, and it got more commercial, more corporation type tables started opening up and stuff. And then eventually they allowed shopping on Sunday, and the flea market from Eastgate was gone. But I remember a couple of places tried this. Like, I can't even remember half the places, but a couple of places opened up their doors on Sundays to do these flea markets. There are still lots of flea markets out there. I can't name all of them, but some of my favorites. There's one up past Clapperson Corners, and instead of heading towards Waterdown, you head in the other direction. It used to be called like something like the Circle M Flea Market, but I don't think it's called that anymore. But it's a great one that has like couple of buildings, and even like I think they have a barn full of stuff. And now to me that is a true flea market, because it does have like the different vendors, and like you can see old farm tools. Not every booth is going to interest you, but for me, I like just walking through and seeing the nostalgia. And that's, and Mike and I will drive up there some, Saturdays or Sundays. I think they're open both days. I could be wrong. I apologize if you drive up there on a Saturday and it's not. But anyhow, it's a wonderful place to go. But Ottawa Street, I know it's been the textile center for the longest time here in Hamilton. But they've actually got quite a bit of antique places. And some of them are a little pricey. But I actually find the Antique Mall is not too bad. And every time I go there, I try to go there once a month, because there's always new antique stores opening, or just new specialty stores too. And there's so much to look for. I've promoted Ottawa Street before and all other things, and I'll continue to promote it. But if you get a chance, definitely check out the Antique Mall, because it will bring you to nostalgia like no other. Because quite frankly, we need a little nostalgia in our life, and I love going there because every table just takes me to a new realm. And, like, oh, I had that. Oh, I always wanted that. And, oh, my brothers used to play that and it just is so much nostalgia. And, for me, I like to collect things that are retro sometimes. So whenever I go, Mike never knows what I'm going to walk in with. So, yeah, definitely check it out. Or, go online and check where there's a flea market near you. You might be listening to this and nowhere near the Hamilton area. So check for those local flea markets and, support them, because a lot of times those flea markets are just, average people who are either renting a vending booth, or they're actually renting out a small store where they're doing this because it's a love and passion of them. And you can find some amazing finds that, whether it's just nostalgic and it's not worth much money, but in your heart it's worth a lot, to like antiques that, obviously there's going to be people that are going to be like, I'm going to try to sell that on eBay and make a hell of a lot more. Whatever the case is, definitely go out, support your local flea markets, and hopefully I've opened up some nostalgia just talking about old flea markets and stuff like that. We're going to take our obligatory intermission, and I'm going to be back to talk about, the passing of a wonderful actress, and also a look at something I haven't talked about before, and I'm actually surprised because it was a memory that was opened up to me recently, and I felt I wanted to talk about it. So that's coming up all after this intermission.
I am the captain of the good ship Pleasure. Come join my crew in search of a treasure. The treasure has been sighted from the old crow's nest. Be prepared to find what you like best. There's candy for you of quality fine. In fact, an assortment that is so divine. The soda pop is cold, just name your brand. The ice cream is delicious and it's right at hand. If it's popcorn you want, well, take my cue. We have the very finest in the world for you. Just steer a course straight up the aisle. We'll have an intermission for a little while.
Welcome back to Devlin's Mondo Nostalgia Radio Show. Got to get used to saying that, so I thought I'd bring up the whole title again. It doesn't really roll off the tongue, but I actually like the sound of it. I don't know why. I just like it. Anyhow, recently an actress passed away, and, if it's an actress or an actor or a celebrity or a person that touched my life in some way, I like to talk about it a bit. Obviously I don't talk about every celebrity death that happens, and some touch me in various ways, and then sometimes somebody dies, and I'm surprised how much it actually touches me. And, of course, the actress I'm talking about is Margot Kidder, a Canadian actress who starred in a lot of films, but she will probably most always be remembered as Lois Lane in the Christopher Reeve movies, Superman 1, 2, 3, and 4, though we try not to talk about 4 that often. Anyhow, she was in all of them, maybe not like always the lead, and when Margot Kidder died, I've seen her in a couple other movies. She was in Black Christmas, where she's just absolutely a hoot and a holler, because she's just so foul-mouthed in that. And I've seen her in some TV shows and stuff. She even did a small role on Smallville. And it's funny because I remember seeing an interview with her, and she was talking about, putting her mouth around words like, Krypton and kryptonite. And she's like, what are these words? And I laughed because I'm like, shouldn't she know these words? She talked about this stuff, in the late 70s, early 80s when she did the Superman movies. But you know what? Margot Kidder was always kind of a character. So, her passing, surprised me when I first heard about it. But, it actually saddened me a lot. I remember even, on my Facebook page, I changed my cover photo, and I changed it to a picture of her and Superman flying from the first movie, Superman the Motion Picture, which, it was a big hit for me when I was a kid. That and Superman 2. Superman 3 was okay, and 4 I didn't really ever see because every time I've read about it, it's gotten so much bad press. But I kind of want to see it now because I hear it's just so bad you gotta live it. So I may have to go look for the Quest of Peace sometime, but I'm going to make sure I find it at a second-hand store because I'm not paying full price for that. Anyhow, the first 2 Supermans, though, are so iconic to me. But when she died, like when Carrie Fisher died, I was really upset too. Because, that's my Princess Leia there, and it was just heartbreaking when she passed away. And I didn't think Margot Kidder would affect me in the same way as like when Carrie Fisher died. And in some ways it wasn't as intense, but I dwelled on it a lot. And then I realized probably why. Christopher Reeve will always be my first Superman. Like, quite frankly, he is the man I first picture. When you say Superman, I see Christopher Reeve. Because I was a little boy, I think I was about 10 years old when I saw Superman, the movie or the motion picture, and I just adored it. You got to remember, we're going back to a time where there wasn't a lot of superhero movies. Now we get superhero movies, 5 or 6 a year, and that's only going to continue to build. But there was a time we didn't get that. We were lucky when a superhero movie showed up at our movie theaters, and Superman the movie was literally, their tagline was, "You will see a man fly," or something like that. And that was one of the first times we ever saw Superman come to life. Now, we had seen him on the small screen. George Reeves played him, and he also was played by some other people in some early serials, but not the big screen where it was like full color and looking beautiful. And Christopher Reeves just brought such a naivety to Superman, and that square jaw, and he had that perfect Superman body at the time that just worked really well. And so in many ways he was my Christopher Reeve. He was my Superman. But since that time, I have to say that I've watched Smallville, and I actually became a big Superman fan after Smallville. And the reason why is because I just started understanding the lore of Superman more. I used to be a huge Batman fan, and I still am. But Batman was my favorite until I started getting more into Superman. And I think Smallville kind of made me think that I actually identify more with Superman than I do with Batman. So suddenly Superman became my favorite hero. And for those of you who know me now, you will usually see Superman somewhere in my home, and lately on my body too. I actually have some Superman pins I wear. I have a Superman bracelet that Corda got me, and I recently found some Superman earrings. And I do own at least one Superman shirt that shows up from time to time. So Superman has become a symbol for me. In fact, recently I've made some life changes that I'm just trying to work on some mental health issues that I'm dealing with, that anybody who's listened to these shows know that I kind of deal with and talk about openly. And Superman is my inspiration. He's always my go-to guy of trying to be like that because I identify with him so much. So I've even bought some stuff that helped me for my fight. But I'm going off topic like I do so often. But anyhow, since Christopher Reeves is my Superman, I've also seen other portrayals that I've been a fan of. Like, I thought Brandon Routh in Superman Returns was amazing. He actually recaptured Christopher Reeve because it is an actual sequel to the first two Superman films, and I think he did a wonderful job with it. But in more recent years, Henry Cavill has been an absolute perfect Superman. So even though Christopher Reeves is my first Superman, I now have other Supermen that I absolutely adore too. I think Henry Cavill has, whether you love or hate the DC universe, I happen to love it. I think he has brought a new dimension to Superman. I think this actor really gets Superman, and I love that we've got to see him play Superman in a couple of films. And as I said, you might not love the films, but you have to agree this man is Superman. Anyhow, that got me to thinking about all the Lois Lanes, and I realized that even though I like the portrayals of Lois Lane by, Erica Durance in Smallville, or I believe it was Kate Bosworth, I think. I could be wrong on that, so I apologize, for Superman Returns. And, of course, Amy Adams in the Batman movies, Batman vs. Superman, Man of Steel, Justice League she's in. And it made me think about it, and I thought to myself, as much as I enjoyed their interpretations of Lois Lane, Margot Kidder will always be my Lois Lane. Other Supermans have won me over. I still love Christopher Reeve, but I have other favorite Supermen. But nobody holds a torch to Margot Kidder. The one that I felt came closest is those old Max Fleischer cartoons where Lois is drawn in this slinky black hair, that flaxen black hair. And to me, that's what Lois Lane looked like. And Margot Kidder she had that gumption. She had that, she was feminine, but she had that, rough voice, probably, because she smoked and stuff, but she had that tough voice. She was a no-nonsense person. And, I was a little boy and I saw her femininity. I also saw her vulnerability, and I also saw her tough-edged image. And I thought, that is a positive character. I didn't say that was a positive female character, because when I was a kid, I didn't see that. I just saw positive characters. Lane to me was as much as a hero. Lois Lane kept getting into trouble and Superman had to save her, but I never always seen her as a damsel in distress because of the fact that she was always trying to get the story. And yes, she'd wind up to become a damsel in distress. But in so many ways, she was just as big a hero because she would risk her life to reach out to get the story. And I think it was such a positive role model. And I realized that, other people have won me over as Superman, but Margot Kidder to me is still Lois Lane, and the only Lois Lane. And so I wanted to talk about her, even though it's been a couple weeks since her passing. But because it stayed with me, I knew this is something in my mind I had to talk about. So there you go, a little tribute. Rest in peace, Margot Kidder. Definitely check out some of her other things she has done, especially if you want to laugh. Black Christmas, still a scary, scary film, but her foul-mouthed character in that is just, you will hear her say things that, I have a feeling Margot Kidder was more like the character in Black Christmas than she was Lois Lane. But thank you for being my Lois Lane, and nobody touching you yet. So thank you for that. I'm going to wrap up our things today with a talk about a topic that I hope doesn't turn you away, because I'll probably just say the topic and I'm already going to hear people going, for their stop buttons or hitting the volume down. I actually want to talk a little bit about silent movies. And I know some of you are probably bored just by me saying silent movies. It's really sad because there was a time that people actually cherished, silent movies. And now they're kind of just like, I can't watch them. It's not just it's black and white, but it's grainy black and white a lot of the times, And, they just overact, they over-emote and stuff. And so, I get it. I actually get why people can't watch silent movies in a lot of ways. But I was recently with a young guy named Adam Vowles, and I'm hoping actually I can get him on the show sometime soon. I doubt he's listening, but if he is, no pressure. But he said he would come on and talk because he's a very interesting young man. And I actually love that he was driving me home one day, and he's with an improv troupe, I should say that, a very funny and smart young man. And we got talking about silent films, that he was going through a silent movie phase. And now, I don't always like to put down the younger generation. I like to look for the positive sides of them. But sometimes it's hard to find because they seem so negative about so many, or sarcastic, or not willing to give things a chance. So when I find something like this, I just love it. And so Adam was telling me that he had been watching a lot of silent movies. He said he's fascinated by them because he likes how big they have to go for their expressions and stuff. And as a young improver, he feels that this is a great way to go, that you can learn how to express yourself by watching silent movies. And I loved it. So he's been watching a whole bunch. And that led me to remember something that I don't believe I ever talked about on this show. And I wanted to, because it was a nice bit of nostalgia for me, and it started warming my heart thinking about it. But when I was his age, in my 20s, not only did I go through a silent movie phase where I watched some silent movies, but I actually remembered, I actually put my own music to silent movies. Now, when I say my own music, I don't mean like I composed. God, Lord, I wish I was that talented. What I meant was I put rock soundtracks or pop soundtracks to silent movies. And then I would stay up all night and try to find what's the right song. And I remember doing like an old Phantom of the Opera. And I remember using like Prince songs and Sheena Easton songs and just anything I could get my hands on that would fit the story. I actually even remember doing this like at least 3 or 4 times. So this wasn't just a one-off. And I remembered I'd be so passionate that I'd actually sit in my room with the TV and, press pause when I was getting ready to find a new song. And, this is all on cassettes and stuff. And it actually, talking to Adam, I forgot all about this, and it just made me so happy to think about this. So what happened was, I remember when I finished, I'd invite friends over, and I remember having some friends over and playing the movie. We'd make it like a big premiere. I remember having to pause the movie every time I had to turn the tape around so the songs would still match up pretty good. And it was a great memory. I did mostly silent films, but I also remember doing Disney's Fantasia. I think that was the one that burnt me out the most because it took so much of my energy, and I think after that I walked away from the project. But I did finish it. I actually turned Fantasia into the history of rock and roll, where Fantasia, celebrates the classical music and the arts. I actually took it and put, like the Beatles to Bruce Springsteen to like, Led Zeppelin to like ABBA, like everybody was in there. And it was just, I remember doing it, and it was so amazing to show my friends and stuff. And it was like a part of my life for a while. And I only did it for about a year, but it was just amazing. And it made me realize that there is some people that still want to enjoy silent movies. It warmed my heart that this young guy was looking up silent movies, and some of them you can even find on places like YouTube and stuff like that. The sad thing about silent movies is how many we've actually lost, because they used to film these on celluloid, and celluloid is it had to be kept at a certain temperature, and there are a lot of cases where they were not, and the celluloid will actually just start to burn. And we have lost so much, like not only full movies, but there are actually movies out there that actually don't have the whole things in them because parts of the movies were actually destroyed in fires and stuff. And so, yeah, it's sad just how much we've lost, but we also have saved a lot of movies too. And they are out there, and I hope that you all get a chance to check them out. Now, if it's not your thing, I'm not forcing you to do this. This isn't a homework project or anything like that. But honestly, if you're a movie fan and you want to be like, like a movie reviewer, or you want to know about the history of movies, silent movies are just absolutely one of the best, places to go. And so I thought I'd end this with, an assignment, or if you want, to check out some early silent films. So here's the names of some. You'll recognize some of the stars of these because they're still icons to this day. And if you don't know them, you should know them. Like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. Harold Lloyd is not as big, but he should be because he was just as amazing. Buster Keaton, The General, that's one of his. He also did Sherlock Jr., which is an amazing film. Charlie Chaplin did stuff like The Kid and City Lights, The Gold Rush, lots of his. Modern Times is a wonderful film you can check out. Harold Lloyd, one of his most famous is Safety Last. And it's a great little, it's not really a short, it's a little longer than a short, but not longer than a thing. And it's a great little film, which you might actually know it because it's an iconic for him hanging off a clock. And that scene is just very iconic. And yeah, definitely check it out. It's even if you just watch clips of it, like that's way before like stuntmen. A lot of these guys were doing their own stunts on top of like acting and stuff. Other movies that you might have heard of or might be interested in, Birth of a Nation. Now it's been remade a couple of times, and this is a very controversial movie, so go into that with some trouble. One of my all-time favorites is Metropolis from 1927. Nosferatu is a very scary movie that a lot of people remember. Another one in that genre is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Calgary? I might get that wrong. If you're like a short film, I know it's on YouTube. A Trip to the Moon is very awesome. The Jazz Singer, 1927 original. I think that's findable. Phantom of the Opera, the 1925 version, is absolutely a wonderful one to check out if you get a chance to. The Cameraman, another Buster Keaton classic. Ben-Hur was done in 1925. A lot of the movies were remade because once sound came, everybody said, hey, we can do it. If you want to try some more modern silent films, you can try the Oscar winner, The Artist, which came out a few years ago, which is primarily a silent film. And 1976's Mel Brooks did Silent Movie, which was a comedic version. He had just done Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles, and he tackled silent films. And this isn't all silent because there is one word in the movie that isn't spoken, and it's quite funny who gets that word. But it's still a very funny movie. So there's some silent films, and of course you can always go on IMDb or Google or Wikipedia and find the names of others. Why don't you just give one a shot? In this loud, noisy world, check it out. A lot of these movies also have like the music that they played in the theater, because a lot of people forget that when these silent movies first aired, a lot of them had musical soundtracks to them, and you'd watch the movie and some person would be sitting there playing the piano with the music that was to play at the parts of the thing. They've even had some retro things. I remember The Staircase a long time ago had Nash the Slash put music to an old silent film. And it was, a niche kind of performance, but I think they're still quite popular now and again. And a couple of the silent films, like I know Metropolis and Nosferatu, I think in some versions, have actually had new soundtracks recorded for them. Metropolis has, in the 80s, Francis Ford Coppola put a pop and rock soundtrack where artists like Queen and Bonnie Tyler added songs to kind of make them interesting. So if you're not right into totally silent films, you can check out some that have actually had new rock or pop inspired things to it. But do your homework on it. It's definitely something I wanted to remember. And I hope you enjoyed my little talk of silent movies, because I just don't think they should be lost. They are just a part of our culture. And yes, I admit they are overacted. But when you don't have a script and all your words are being said over like written, these are still very important to have today. So I hope you enjoyed my talk on silent movies, and I hope I didn't bore you for people who just can't stand silent movies. I hope I at least interested you in the things I had to say, or even better, intrigued you to go out and search one out and check one out, because you can get them in comedies, dramas, horror, just about anything, science fiction even. So go out there and find it. Anyhow, that is my show for today. Please, if you get a chance, comment on this and tell me if you like the fact that I'm going to be dealing with more pop culture and nostalgia. I know I really didn't get into like venting or stuff, but you know what? Those times will come, and I want to concentrate more on positivity and stuff like that. Even though I even think on my episodes where I did get a little dark, I always found a positive spin to it. But let me know what you think, and if you have any ideas or things you want me to talk about, it'd be great. I do plan to have co-hosts on because I love when I have co-hosts on. They're just going to be talking nostalgia and pop culture with me more now, but I'll still get to know them because let's face it, we're all going to become pop culture and nostalgia one day, even in our lives. Even if we don't become famous, we all have things we reminisce about. We all have things that we enjoy. So this show is really for everyone, and hopefully we'll talk about stuff that you're interested in. Thank you for listening, and I will see you again next week. And until then, I look forward to talking to you very, very soon.